Something strange happens right before things align. Your mind gets louder, not calmer, not clearer, louder. Suddenly you're questioning everything. Did I do the right thing? Should I check again? Maybe I missed something. And the more important the change is, the more intense that mental noise becomes. You tell yourself you're just being careful, responsible, logical. But something feels off, because the overthinking appears right when things were starting to feel quiet, right when things seemed to be settling. And that's when most people make a mistake they never even realize they're making. They start interfering, checking again, adjusting again, pushing again, trying to fix something that was already stabilizing. But what you interpret as uncertainty is often something very different happening beneath the surface. And the moment you start reacting to that internal noise, you interrupt the process that was about to complete itself. Because the mind is reacting to something the nervous system is still integrating. And if you don't understand this moment, you'll keep sabotaging the very shifts you've been waiting for. The question is not why you overthink. The real question is what phase your nervous system just entered. And that changes everything. Let's break down what your nervous system is actually doing. When people talk about manifestation or alignment, they usually focus on emotions, excitement, visualization, belief. But none of those are the real mechanism. The real mechanism is stabilization. Your nervous system is constantly predicting reality based on who it believes you are. Your identity is not just psychological, it's neurological. Your brain is always running a model of the world. But more importantly, it's running a model of you inside that world. And when something begins to shift in your life, that internal model starts updating. Not instantly, gradually. This follows what I call the neural stabilization framework, the predictable phases your nervous system moves through during identity change. Most people only notice the emotional parts, but the real process is happening at the level of neural prediction. Your brain is constantly asking one question: is this still the same identity? Or is something new emerging? And when the answer starts to change, the system enters a recalibration phase. That recalibration often feels like doubt, like hesitation, like overthinking. But those are just surface symptoms. Underneath, something else is happening. Your nervous system is trying to stabilize a new internal reference point. And that stabilization requires silence. Not interference, but there is a moment most people completely misinterpret. A moment where the mind suddenly becomes hyperactive, where thoughts multiply, where certainty disappears, where everything suddenly feels fragile. Most people think that means something is going wrong. But in reality, that moment often appears right before alignment stabilizes. And if you don't understand why, you'll react to the wrong signal. Your nervous system operates through prediction. Every experience you have is filtered through what the brain already expects. This is called predictive processing. The brain doesn't just react to reality, it predicts it. And when something new begins forming in your life, your prediction system starts adjusting. At first, it's subtle, a small shift in how you see yourself, a small shift in what feels possible, a small shift in what feels normal. But those tiny shifts create something called prediction error. Prediction error happens when reality begins deviating from the brain's internal model. And your brain hates prediction error because uncertainty means instability. So it begins recalibrating. Quietly. Slowly, almost invisibly. But here's the interesting part. As the nervous system approaches a new stable identity, there is often a brief spike in cognitive activity. The mind starts scanning, analyzing, checking, rechecking, looking for inconsistencies. Not because something is wrong, but because the system is trying to confirm a new pattern. Think of it like a camera focusing. Right before the image becomes sharp, the lens moves rapidly. Tiny adjustments, back and forth, searching for clarity. Your mind does something similar. Right before stability, it moves, and those movements feel like overthinking. The problem is not the thoughts. The problem is your reaction to them. Most people believe that thinking means something requires action. If a thought appears, it must mean something needs fixing. But thoughts are not instructions. They're signals. And during identity recalibration, those signals become louder. Not because reality is unstable, but because the system is finalizing a new reference point. This is where the observer effect becomes useful as a metaphor. In physics, observing a system changes how it behaves, and psychologically, the same dynamic appears. The more you interfere with a process that is stabilizing, the longer it takes to stabilize. Imagine a snow globe. You shake it. Particles move everywhere, but eventually, they settle. If you keep shaking it every time a particle moves, it never stabilizes. Your nervous system works the same way. Alignment requires stillness, but overthinking creates movement, and movement delays stabilization. Have you noticed this silence lately? That strange calm that sometimes appears before your mind starts questioning everything. That moment where things feel almost settled. But instead of trusting it, your mind begins searching for problems. That silence is important, because silence is often the first sign that resistance is dissolving. When resistance collapses, the nervous system briefly enters a quiet integration phase. But the brain is not used to that silence. It's used to effort, control, adjustment. So when calm appears, the brain interprets it as danger, and it tries to re-engage control. This is where overthinking begins, not because alignment is failing, but because the brain is verifying the new stability, and that verification creates temporary noise. Another layer of this process involves identity remapping. Your identity is essentially a set of neurological patterns. Patterns that define what feels normal for you, what feels possible, what feels expected. When life begins shifting in a new direction, those patterns must update. But identity updates slowly. And right before the shift completes, the old identity often makes one final appearance. That's when thoughts like these show up. What if this doesn't work? What if I misunderstood something? What if I should double-check everything? These thoughts feel logical, but they're not logic. They're echoes, the last signals of an identity losing dominance. Your brain is testing the old model against the new one, and if you react emotionally to those thoughts, you reinforce the old model. But if you observe them calmly, the new identity stabilizes faster. Another interesting piece of this puzzle is emotional stability. Most people assume alignment should feel exciting, powerful, electric. But excitement is actually unstable. Excitement creates nervous system activation, acceleration, energy spikes. But stabilization feels different. It feels calm, neutral, quiet, sometimes almost boring. And that calm can confuse people because they expect alignment to feel dramatic. So when things start stabilizing, the mind searches for stimulation, for confirmation, for reassurance, and that search often appears as overthinking. But the calm is not absence. The calm is integration. There is also a subtle form of self-sabotage hidden inside logic. Your brain prefers familiar discomfort over unfamiliar stability, because familiarity equals safety. So when a new reality begins stabilizing, the brain checks for threats, and sometimes it creates them. Through analysis, through doubt, through endless mental loops. But those loops are not wisdom. They're friction. They're the nervous system trying to confirm that the new state is safe. And that confirmation requires one thing most people struggle to give it: space. space to stabilize, space to integrate, space to finalize the shift. This usually happens after resistance collapses, when the effort phase ends, when the constant pushing stops, when the nervous system finally releases tension. And right after that release, the system enters a threshold state, not the old identity, not fully the new one, a transitional phase. And transitions are inherently unstable. But instability during transition does not mean failure. It means the process is active. Your brain is updating predictions. Your nervous system is recalibrating safety. Your identity is reorganizing itself around a new baseline. All of that happens quietly, mostly below awareness. But the surface symptom is often the same: overthinking. So what should you actually do when this phase appears? Not much. Which is exactly why people struggle with it, because the instinct is to react, to intervene, to control. But stabilization requires the opposite. Stop reacting. Stop measuring. Stop checking. Let it stabilize. Let the nervous system integrate. Let the identity finalize its new pattern. Because alignment is not something you force. It's something the system settles into. The moment before, stability often feels like uncertainty. But uncertainty is not always a warning. Sometimes uncertainty is the final adjustment before clarity. Your nervous system just needs a little time, a little stillness, a little trust in the process that's already unfolding. Because the mind will keep producing thoughts. That's what it does. But not every thought deserves action. Some thoughts are just the nervous system completing its work, and the faster you learn to recognize that moment, the less you'll interrupt the shifts already happening in your life. And this is only one phase inside the neural stabilization framework. If you're in this phase, comment "stabilizing." If this perspective expands your awareness, subscribe so you don't interrupt the next shift. The silence was recalibration.